General Krathix limped into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his 4 legs moving with difficulty. Scars covered his gray skin, remnants of battles he wished he could forget. The chamber was massive, with representatives from 200 different species seated in circular rows that rose toward the crystal dome ceiling. All eyes turned to watch him approach the center platform. He had not wanted to come here. 5 years had passed since the war with humanity. 5 years since he had lost everything. His fleet, his honor, his belief that the council was wise, but they had summoned him, and he still held enough respect for tradition to answer. General Krathix. The speaker's voice echoed through the chamber. The speaker was a Thalren, her crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. You have been called to provide testimony regarding the human conflict. The Council wishes to understand how a primitive species from a single world defeated our expeditionary force. Krathix felt his blood run cold. They still did not understand. After everything, they still believed humanity was primitive. Honored Council, he began, his voice rough from disuse. I come not to make excuses for my defeat, but to warn you. Humanity is not what we believed. They are not weak, they are not primitive, and above all, murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several council members exchanged amused glances. Please explain, the speaker said, though her tone suggested she was merely being polite. Krathix took a deep breath. 5 years ago, I led 50 battleships to Earth's system. Our mission was simple: force the humans to accept council authority and pay the standard tribute. They had been sending exploration ships into council space without permission. We were to teach them proper respect. He paused, remembering that confident journey. How certain he had been of victory. The humans met us with 20 ships. I thought it would be over quickly. I was wrong. His voice dropped. Their weapons burned through our shields like they were nothing. Their ships moved faster than anything I had seen. When we tried to retreat, they followed us. When we tried to fight, they cut through us like we were made of paper. But you survived, Council Member Horvath interrupted, his tentacles waving dismissively. And you negotiated a retreat. Surely this proves the humans can be reasoned with. You misunderstand, Krathix said firmly. I survived because they let me survive. When my flagship was destroyed, I was floating in space, dying. A human ship picked me up. A human medic, a female named Sarah Chen, treated my wounds while her people were still fighting mine. She could have let me die. Instead, she saved me. He looked around the chamber, seeing skepticism on most faces. When the battle ended, the humans called me to their command ship. I expected execution. Instead, Admiral Chen Wei offered me tea. She sat across from me and said, "We don't want to be your enemies. We just want you to leave us alone." She let my surviving crews go home. She sent medical supplies for our wounded. She asked only that we sign a treaty recognizing Earth's independence. The chamber erupted in conversation. Several council members were laughing. So you were defeated by a species that showed you mercy, the speaker said, amusement clear in her voice. General, perhaps the problem was not human strength, but your own incompetence. Mercy is weakness. A truly strong species would have eliminated you. Krathix felt anger rise in his chest. That is exactly the mistake I made. I thought mercy meant weakness. I was wrong. Humanity's mercy was not weakness. It was choice. They chose not to exterminate us when they easily could have. Preposterous, Horvath declared. One world against the might of the Galactic Council? General, I think your defeat has damaged more than your body. Your mind seems affected as well. Other council members nodded in agreement. Krathix felt desperation creeping in. I am telling you the truth. The humans were holding back. Their admiral told me so directly. She said they used only minimal force because they did not want unnecessary death. If we attack them again, enough, the speaker cut him off. General Krathix, this council appreciates your service, but your testimony reveals only your own failures. Humanity controls one star system. We control thousands. The idea that they could threaten us is absurd. She turned to address the full council. It is clear what happened. General Krathix underestimated the humans and led his fleet poorly. The humans, being practical, offered generous terms rather than face a second, larger fleet. This shows wisdom on their part, not strength. Krathix wanted to scream. You are making a terrible mistake. Please. I beg you. The council has made its decision. The speaker announced. Humanity's refusal to accept council authority cannot stand. It sets a dangerous precedent. We will send a new fleet, properly commanded, with sufficient forces to ensure compliance. 200 battleships should be adequate. The vote was swift. Only 12 council members voted against the new expedition. The rest approved it enthusiastically. Krathix stood in the center of the chamber, watching his worst fears become reality. They were going to poke the sleeping monster again, but this time with a bigger stick. General, the speaker said, you are dismissed. Enjoy your retirement. The new fleet will show you how such matters should be handled. He limped out of the chamber, his heart heavy. In the corridor outside, he paused and looked back at the massive doors. Behind them, the council was already discussing logistics, choosing commanders, planning their triumph. They had no idea what they had just done. Krathix thought about Admiral Chen Wei, about her tired eyes when she had offered him that tea. She had looked like someone who had done something necessary but unpleasant. She had looked like someone who hoped never to do it again. Now the council was going to force her hand. He made his way slowly to the communication center. He needed to send a message to his family, to tell them he loved them, because if this war went the way he feared it would, the council's arrogance might doom them all. As he walked, he remembered something else Admiral Chen Wei had said. We really don't want to show you what we can actually do. Please don't make us. The council had just made them. The council's armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a swarm of metal locusts. 200 battleships, each 1 kilometer long, arranged themselves in perfect formation. Their shields glowed with power. Their weapons were charged and ready. Lord Jakor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Triumph, and smiled. He was a Corvesh, tall and reptilian, with golden scales that marked him as nobility. This was his chance to erase the shame that Krathix had brought upon the council. This was his moment of glory. Open a channel to the human homeworld, he commanded. The communication officer, a nervous Pilgrath, nodded. Channel open, my lord. Zakor straightened his uniform and spoke with authority. Attention, humans of Earth. This is Lord Zakor of the Galactic Council Fleet. You have refused to acknowledge council authority. You have rejected your proper place in the galactic order. This ends now. You will surrender immediately and accept council governance, or we will take your world by force. You have 1 standard hour to respond. He closed the channel and turned to his officers. Let them see our power. Let them understand their mistake. 30 minutes later, the response came. A single human ship appeared on their sensors, moving toward the fleet. It was smaller than the council battleships, sleek and dark gray. As it approached, Jakor received a communication request. They wish to speak, my lord. The communication officer reported. Put them through. Let me see their fear. The screen activated, showing a human woman in a dark blue uniform. She had short black hair and calm eyes that reminded Jakor uncomfortably of a predator. Her uniform bore symbols he did not recognize. I am Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Defense Fleet, she said in perfect galactic common language. Her voice was polite but cold. Lord Jakor, I am authorized to negotiate your fleet's peaceful withdrawal from our system. Jacor laughed. His officers joined him. Perhaps you do not understand your situation. I command 200 warships. My sensors show you have only 47 ships in your entire system. Surrender is your only option. Chen Wei's expression did not change. Lord Jacor, I need you to listen carefully. 5 years ago, your council sent a fleet to our system. We defended ourselves using approximately 30% of our actual military capability. We did this because we were trying to minimize casualties on both sides. We did not want to kill unnecessarily. She paused, and something in her eyes made Jacor's amusement fade slightly. The council has interpreted our restraint as weakness. This was a mistake. I am offering you one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. If you choose to attack, we will defend ourselves with full force. Please understand what that means. Jacor felt his confidence return. This was bluffing, nothing more. Humans were known for their deceptive practices. Admiral Chen, he said with exaggerated patience, you expect me to believe you were holding back? That you deliberately lost ships and soldiers? No commander would do such a thing. You are wrong, Chen Wei replied. We absolutely would do such a thing, if it meant achieving peace with minimal loss of life. But you have given us no choice now. Last chance, Lord Jacor. Withdraw, or face the consequences. Jacor cut the transmission. Humans and their lies. All ships, prepare to attack. Target their military installations first. Show them what real power looks like. The fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Jacor felt satisfaction as his weapons systems locked onto targets. This would be glorious. Fire at will. The council ships unleashed their weapons. Brilliant beams of energy lanced across space toward human defensive platforms and ships. Then everything went wrong. The human ships moved. Not the slow, predictable movements of normal vessels, but impossible accelerations that should have been fatal to any crew. They simply weren't where the weapons fire went. Every shot missed. What? Jacor started to say. The human counterattack was like nothing he had ever witnessed. Their weapons struck with surgical precision. Not random fire, but calculated shots that hit specific systems. Shields failed. Engines exploded. Weapon arrays melted into slag. 3 council ships were disabled in the first 30 seconds. Evasive maneuvers, Jacor shouted. Return fire! But the human ships were everywhere and nowhere. They moved through his formation like sharks through fish. Each pass leaving another council ship crippled or destroyed. Their weapons burned hotter than anything in council arsenals. Their accuracy was perfect. 10 ships gone. 20, 30. My lord, they are not trying to disable us anymore. His tactical officer screamed. They are destroying everything they hit. Jacor watched in horror as his beautiful fleet was torn apart. A human ship, smaller than his cruisers, took on 5 council battleships simultaneously and reduced them to debris in under 2 minutes. How are they moving like that? His helmsman gasped. Those accelerations should kill organic crews. An emergency transmission came through from one of his surviving captains. Lord Jacor, I am reading the data on these ships. The gravitational forces they are pulling would crush any of our people. How are the humans surviving this? Jacor did not have an answer. He watched as Admiral Chen Wei's flagship, now identifiable by its command signatures, executed a maneuver that involved accelerating, spinning, and reversing direction in a way that violated everything he knew about biology. 50 council ships destroyed, 70, 100. My lord, we must retreat, his first officer begged, but there was nowhere to retreat to. The human ships had surrounded them. Every escape vector was covered. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the human attack stopped. Jacor's damaged flagship drifted among the wreckage of his fleet. Warning alarms blared. Fires burned in 3 sections. Over half his crew was dead or injured. A transmission came through. Admiral Chen Wei again. her face still calm but her eyes tired. "Lord Jakor, your fleet is disabled. I am sending rescue ships to evacuate your survivors before your reactors fail. Do not resist. This is over." Jakor slumped in his command chair, staring at the debris field that had been his pride. In less than an hour, 200 battleships had been reduced to scrap and corpses, and the humans were sending rescue ships. He thought about Krathix, about the old general's warnings, about how everyone had laughed. No one was laughing now. Through his viewport, he saw human rescue craft approaching, moving carefully through the wreckage. They were coming to save the people who had just tried to conquer their world. Jakor finally understood what Krathix had tried to tell them. Humanity's mercy was not weakness. It was a choice they made even when they had every reason not to. And that, more than their weapons or their ships, was what made them truly terrifying. Krathix sat in his small apartment on Velkar Station, watching the news feeds with grim satisfaction. The reports were chaotic, contradictory, but the truth was clear enough. The Council's grand fleet had been destroyed. He poured himself a drink of his homeworld's traditional spirits and raised the glass toward the display screen. "I tried to warn you," he said quietly to the images of panicking council members. "You would not listen." His communication console chimed. An intelligence report. Flagged. Urgent. Even in retirement, Krathix maintained contacts in military intelligence. Old friends, who still valued his judgment. He opened the file and began reading. What he saw made his hands tremble. The report was a compilation of data gathered from the battle, from interrogations of survivors, from human databases that had been briefly accessed before Earth's security protocols locked everything down again. It was incomplete, fragmented, but it painted a picture that explained everything. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. Krathix had to read that line 3 times. Class 12. The galactic database only went up to Class 15, and those worlds were considered uninhabitable hellscapes where nothing intelligent could possibly evolve. He kept reading. Earth's gravity was 1.3 times standard. The air contained 21% oxygen, a concentration that would be toxic to most species for extended periods. The temperature swings between seasons were extreme. The planet had active tectonics, violent storms, and an ecosystem full of predators. And humans had evolved at the top of that nightmare's food chain. The report included a section on human biology that made Krathix's blood run cold. Humans were endurance hunters. On Earth, they had literally chased prey animals for days until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They could regulate their body temperature through liquid secretion, something almost unique in the galaxy. They could survive for weeks without food, days without water, and continue functioning with minimal sleep. Their reaction time was optimized for pursuit predation. Their eyes could track fast-moving objects with precision. They could throw projectiles with deadly accuracy, a rare skill among intelligent species. But it was the section on human psychology that truly frightened him. Humans formed emotional bonds across species barriers. They had domesticated other predators on their world, turning wolves into companions. They felt empathy for beings that were not their own kind. This was almost unknown in nature. Yet they were also capable of terrible violence when threatened. Human history was filled with wars, conflicts, and weapons of horrifying creativity. They had developed nuclear weapons before achieving spaceflight. They had created artificial plagues. They had invented ways to kill that showed both genius and horror. And they had learned, slowly and painfully through their own bloody history, to control these impulses, to choose cooperation over destruction when possible. Krathix thought back to his time aboard the human ship after his rescue. He remembered Sarah Chen, the medic, working on his injuries while her ship was still in combat. He had asked her why she bothered saving enemy wounded. "Because you are not my enemy," she had said, her hands gentle despite the weapons she carried. "Your government is my enemy. You are just a soldier following orders. Same as me." At the time, he had thought it was naivety. Now, he understood, it was something far more complex. Humans could separate the individual from the institution. They could hate the war while still seeing the person on the other side as someone worth saving. His console chimed again. Another file. This one, marked with the highest security clearance. Krathix should not have access to it, but his friend in intelligence was apparently willing to risk court-martial to share this information. The file contained an intercepted communication from Admiral Chen Wei to Lord Jakor after the battle. Krathix played it. Chen Wei's face appeared, and Krathix was struck again by her eyes. They were brown, warm, by human standards, but they held something ancient and tired. Lord Jakor, I want you to understand something, she said in the recording. The maneuvers you saw today, the ones that terrified your people, those are normal for us. The gravity forces that would kill your crews are what we grew up with. The acceleration that seems impossible is just how we built our ships, because we can handle it, and you cannot. She paused, and Krathix saw sadness in her expression. We are not trying to be cruel. We are not trying to terrify you. But you need to understand what we are. Earth is not a gentle world. It made us tough in ways you cannot imagine. We can outrun, outthink, and outlast almost any species we have met. Not because we are better than you, but because our world demanded it for survival. Chen Wei leaned closer to the camera. 5 years ago, when we fought your first fleet, we were trying to minimize deaths. We let many of your ships escape. We pulled our punches because we hoped you would understand the message, leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. But you interpreted our mercy as weakness. You came back with more ships, more weapons, more arrogance. Her voice became harder. So we stopped holding back. Not completely, we could have destroyed every ship in minutes instead of an hour. We could have pursued your fleeing vessels and eliminated them. But we did not. Even now, even after you came to conquer our world, we are still showing you more mercy than you showed us. The recording ended. Krathix sat in silence, processing what he had learned. The humans had still been holding back. Even in that devastating battle, they had not used their full capability. What would that look like? What could humanity do if they truly stopped caring about enemy casualties? He did not want to know. Another thought struck him. The humans were not just physically formidable. They were psychologically unique. They could be ruthlessly efficient killers when necessary, then turn around and rescue the survivors with genuine compassion. They could hate what they had to do while still doing it perfectly. This was what the Council had provoked. Not simple warriors, but a species that had spent millions of years learning to survive on a world that wanted them dead, then spent thousands more years learning to control their own violent nature. Krathix opened a new communication window. He needed to contact the Council again, even though they had not listened before. Because now, he had proof. Now, he had data. As he composed his message, he thought about Sarah Chen again. She had told him something while treating his wounds, something he had not understood at the time. We do not want to be the monsters, she had said. We have seen what happens when powerful beings choose cruelty. Earth's history taught us that lesson in blood. We would rather be feared for what we could do than hated for what we did. Now, finally, Krathix understood. Humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their physical capabilities. It was their ability to choose mercy, even when vengeance would be easier. And the Council had just forced them to show what happened when that mercy was withdrawn. He finished his message and sent it to every Council member he could reach. Most would ignore it. Some would mock him again. But maybe, just maybe, a few would listen. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other across the circular rows. Some demanded immediate retaliation against humanity. Others called for peace. Many simply sat in shocked silence. The speaker struck her crystalline staff against the floor 3 times, creating a sound that cut through the noise. Order! We will have order! The chamber gradually quieted, though tension remained thick in the air. We have received preliminary reports from the survivors, the speaker continued, her voice strained. Of 200 battleships, Only 43 returned. Over 100,000 council personnel are dead or missing. Lord Jekor is in medical care and unable to testify. A Corvesh representative stood, his golden scales dull with stress. How is this possible? How could primitives from one world destroy our fleet? Perhaps, a quiet voice said from the entrance, because you should have listened to me the first time. All heads turned. General Krothix stood at the chamber doors, leaning on a support cane. He looked older than when he had testified before, but his eyes were sharp. General Krothix, the speaker said coldly, you were not summoned. No, but I am here anyway. And this time, you are going to listen. He limped down to the central platform, moving slowly but with determination. I sent you data files. I sent you intelligence reports. I sent you everything you needed to understand what humanity is. Did any of you read them? The silence was answer enough. Krothix activated the chamber's display systems. Images appeared in the air above the central platform. Images of Earth, of humans, of battles. Let me educate you, he said, his voice carrying authority he had not shown in years. This is Earth. By galactic standards, it is a death world. High gravity, dangerous atmosphere, extreme conditions. Most of you could not survive there for a day without protective equipment. He changed the image to show human anatomy. This is what evolved on that nightmare planet. Humans are endurance predators. Do you understand what that means? It means they hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They can run for hours. They can function on minimal rest. Their bodies are built to survive conditions that would kill most of us. A council member interrupted. But we have seen humans. They do not look that formidable. Krothix laughed bitterly. That is exactly the mistake everyone makes. Humans do not look dangerous. They are not large. They do not have natural armor or claws. But they are persistence incarnate, and they are creative in ways that should terrify you. He pulled up footage from the recent battle. Watch this. See how their ships move? Those acceleration forces would turn your bodies to liquid. Humans feel it as uncomfortable pressure. They built their technology around capabilities that seem impossible to us because they are impossible for us. The council watched in silence as human ships danced through the battle, moving with grace and speed that defied physics as most species understood it. But here is what you really need to understand, Krothix continued, changing the display again. Humans have been fighting each other for their entire history. They invented weapons before they invented agriculture. They created ways to kill that make our military technology look primitive. Images flashed by human weapons through the ages, from simple spears to devices that could crack planets. And then, Krothix said softly, they learned to stop. They looked at their own history, at the suffering they had caused themselves, and they chose a different path. Not because they became weak, but because they became wise. He turned to face the council directly. When I was rescued by humans after my fleet was destroyed, I met a medic named Sarah Chen. She treated my wounds while her ship was still under fire. I asked her why she bothered. Do you know what she said? The chamber waited. She said that I was not her enemy, that my government was her enemy, but I was just a soldier doing my job. She separated me, the individual, from the institution I represented. This is something humans do naturally, that most of us struggle to understand. Krothix pulled up the final image Admiral Chen Wei's face during her communication with Jekor. This is Admiral Chen Wei. She commanded the defense of Earth in both conflicts. After destroying your fleet, she sent rescue ships to save the survivors. She did this even though you came to conquer her world. Even though you killed her people, she still chose to save you. He let that sink in for a moment. Do you understand yet? Humanity's mercy is not weakness. It is a conscious choice they make despite every evolutionary instinct telling them to eliminate threats permanently. They choose not to because they have learned, through their own terrible history, What happens when powerful beings refuse mercy? The speaker was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. What do you suggest we do, General? I suggest you do what you should have done 5 years ago. Acknowledge Earth as an independent power. Respect their boundaries. Offer genuine peace, not demands disguised as negotiations. He paused. And pray they accept. Pray? A council member scoffed. To whom? To anyone who might listen. Krathix replied seriously. Because if you provoke them again, if you make them believe that peace is impossible, they will stop showing mercy. And if humanity ever decides that the galaxy is too dangerous to let us continue as we are, we will not be able to stop them. The chamber erupted in argument again. But it was different this time. There was less arrogance, more fear. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in. The speaker called for order once more. The council will vote on General Krathix's proposal. All in favor of opening peace negotiations with Earth on equal terms. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. 147 in favor, 30 against, 23 abstaining. The motion passes, the speaker announced. We will contact Earth immediately and request, she emphasized the word, a diplomatic meeting. Krathix nodded slowly. It was not everything he had hoped for, but it was a start. As the council members began filing out, several approached him. They asked questions about humanity, about Earth, about how to approach the negotiations without causing offense. One young representative from a species Krathix did not recognize asked, General, do you think they will accept peace? Krathix thought about Sarah Chen's gentle hands treating his wounds. He thought about Admiral Chen Wei's tired eyes after the battle. He thought about how humans had sent rescue ships even for enemies who had tried to destroy them. Yes, he said finally. They will accept peace, because despite everything we have done to them, despite every reason they have to hate us, humans still want the same thing they wanted at the beginning. They just want to be left alone. They want respect, not conquest. They want cooperation, not war. He looked at the young representative seriously. The question is not whether they will accept peace. The question is whether we will be wise enough to honor it this time. The representative nodded and walked away, deep in thought. Krathix stood alone in the emptying chamber, leaning on his cane. He was tired. The wounds from 5 years ago still ached. But for the first time since that terrible war, he felt something like hope. Maybe the galaxy had finally learned its lesson. Maybe humanity would get the peace they deserved. And maybe, just maybe, the Council would never forget what happened when they pushed the Death World predators too far. 3 months after the second battle, something unprecedented happened. A human diplomatic vessel entered Council space. The ship was not large by military standards, but its arrival caused panic throughout the Council stations. Security forces went on high alert. Some representatives suggested fleeing, others suggested immediate attack. The speaker, to her credit, maintained order. The human delegation consisted of 12 people led by Ambassador Park Ji-hyun, a middle-aged woman with gray-streaked hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore formal diplomatic attire in dark blue, the same color as the Terran Defense Fleet uniforms. Krathix watched from the visitors' gallery as the humans entered the council chamber. He had been invited to attend as an observer, given his unique experience with humanity. The chamber was packed. Every council member was present, along with military advisors and diplomatic staff. Everyone wanted to see what humanity would demand. Ambassador Park walked to the central platform with calm confidence. She did not move like a warrior, but there was something in her bearing that suggested she could be dangerous if necessary. It reminded Krathix of Admiral Chen Wei. Honored members of the Galactic Council. Park began in perfect galactic common, her voice clear and measured. I come before you today to establish formal diplomatic relations between Earth and the Council, and to ensure that what has happened between us never happens again. She activated a holographic display. A map of space appeared, showing Earth's solar system and the surrounding sectors. Earth claims sovereignty over these systems, she said, highlighting an area that included 50 star systems. We ask that the Council recognize this as Terran space. In exchange, we offer peaceful trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense agreements for any Council member that wishes to establish friendly relations. Murmurs ran through the chamber. The territory was substantial but not unreasonable. More importantly, the humans were not demanding tribute or reparations despite their military victories. We do not seek to join the Council at this time, Park continued. We prefer to maintain our independence while establishing ourselves as peers in the galactic community. However, we are willing to sign non-aggression treaties and participate in joint initiatives that benefit all parties. The speaker leaned forward. And if the Council refuses these terms? Park's expression did not change. But something in her eyes hardened. Then we will maintain our borders by force. We do not want war. We have never wanted war. But we will defend ourselves if necessary. And the Council has already seen what that means. She paused, letting the implied threat sink in. However, I do not believe it will come to that. The Council has shown wisdom in requesting these negotiations. I believe we can find terms that satisfy everyone. For the next 3 hours, Park answered questions from Council members. She was patient with even hostile questions, clear in her explanations, and firm, but not aggressive in her positions. Krathix found himself impressed. The ambassador was skilled at diplomacy in ways that complemented humanity's military capabilities. She made peace seem not just possible, but desirable. Finally, the speaker called for a recess. The human delegation was escorted to guest quarters, while the Council debated in private. Krathix made his way to those quarters, using his diplomatic credentials to request a meeting. To his surprise, Park agreed. Immediately, they met in a simple conference room. Park sat across from him, studying his scars with professional interest, but no pity. General Krathix, she said, I have read the reports about your testimony to the Council. Both times. Thank you for trying to prevent this war. I failed, Krathix said simply. But you tried. That matters. Park poured tea from a human vessel she had brought, apparently a diplomatic tradition. I am told you were rescued by one of our medical officers. Sarah Chen. Sarah Chen. Yes, she saved my life when she had no reason to. She was reprimanded for that, you know, Park said, surprising him. Some of our commanders thought she took an unnecessary risk, treating enemy wounded during active combat, but she did it anyway. Yes, because that is who we are. Or who we try to be, at least. Park sipped her tea. General, I am going to tell you something that very few people outside Earth know. When your first fleet arrived, our military leadership recommended destroying it completely. They had contingency plans that would have eliminated every ship within the first hour. Krathix felt his blood chill. But our civilian government overruled them. Our president at the time said that we needed to remember who we wanted to be, not just who we could be. So we held back. We tried to send a message without unnecessary killing. She set down her cup. The Council interpreted this as weakness, as you know, and it nearly cost us everything when the Second Fleet arrived. But even then, even when we knew we could not afford mercy, we still chose to save the survivors. Because if we lose that, if we become the monsters we are capable of being, then we have lost something more important than any war. Krathix met her eyes. What did Admiral Chen Wei mean when she told Lord Jakor that humanity had still been holding back, even in the second battle? Park was silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, We have weapons we did not use, General. Weapons that could sterilize worlds. Weapons that could crack planets. Weapons we built during our darkest times and swore never to use again. If we had truly stopped caring about enemy casualties, your fleet would not have lasted 10 minutes. She looked tired suddenly, much like Chen Wei had in those recordings. But we did care. Even after you tried to conquer us. Even after you killed our people. We still cared enough to send rescue ships. That is humanity's strength and our weakness. We can be the galaxy's most dangerous predators, but we would rather be its friends. Later that evening, the council reconvened. The vote was swift and overwhelming. Earth's terms were accepted with only minor modifications. Trade agreements were drafted. Embassy exchanges were planned. Humanity officially joined the galactic community as an independent power. During the ceremony formalizing the agreements, Ambassador Park made a short speech that would be remembered across 1,000 worlds. "We want what everyone wants," she said. "To be left alone when we ask. To be respected when we speak. To be remembered as the people who chose to protect rather than conquer. If you force us to be warriors, we will be the best warriors you have ever seen. But we would much rather be your friends." Krathix watched from the gallery as the council members stood and applauded. It was genuine this time, not the polite diplomacy of politics. They had learned their lesson at tremendous cost. After the ceremony, Admiral Chen Wei herself arrived, joining the delegation. Krathix requested a meeting with her, and she agreed. They met in a garden on the council station, among plants from 12 worlds. Chen Wei looked the same as in the recordings, calm, competent, and carrying a weight that Krathix understood too well. "Admiral," he said, "I wanted to thank you. For Sarah Chen. For saving my life." "She made her own choice," Chen Wei replied. "But I supported it. You deserved mercy, even if your government did not. I have one question, if you will permit it." "Ask." "Why? After everything we did, after we tried twice to conquer your world, why did you still show mercy?" Chen Wei looked up at the artificial sky above the garden. "Because we have seen what happens when powerful beings refuse mercy, General. Earth's history is full of empires that chose cruelty over compassion. We learned, eventually, that strength without restraint does not make you powerful. It makes you monstrous. Thus, five, she looked back at him. We would rather be feared for what we could do than hated for what we did. And we would rather be remembered as the people who had the power to destroy, but chose to protect instead." Krathix felt something in his chest, a feeling he had not experienced in 5 years. It took him a moment to recognize it as hope. "The galaxy is fortunate," he said quietly. Chen Wei smiled, a small, sad expression. "Because if we had not learned those lessons, if we had not seen the cost of endless war on our own world, we might have become something far worse than any threat the galaxy has ever faced." They stood in silence for a moment, 2 veterans of a war neither had wanted, both hoping it would be the last. In the council chamber behind them, representatives from 200 species worked together to build a peace with humanity. A peace based not on fear alone, but on respect. A peace that acknowledged Earth as an equal, not a subject. And in military academies across the galaxy, a new lesson would be taught. A lesson about a species that had the power to destroy, but chose to protect. About warriors who could be terrifying in battle, yet gentle in peace. About the Death World predators who became the galaxy's reluctant guardians. The lesson was simple. Never mistake humanity's mercy for weakness. And never, ever, make them show you what they are truly capable of. Because if you do, you might not survive to regret it. The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched vast and silent. 1,200 representatives from across the galaxy sat in circular rows, their seats arranged by age and importance. At the center platform stood Ambassador Kalen Voss of the Threxy hegemony. His blue-scaled skin reflected the soft lights as he checked the time display. The humans would arrive any moment now. Voss felt completely calm. He had done this 7 times before, welcoming new species to the council. It always went the same way. The newcomers arrived, nervous and excited. They looked around with wide eyes at the ancient station and the powerful civilizations gathered here. They listened carefully to the rules. They accepted whatever status the council offered. Then they went home to tell their people about the wonderful galaxy they had joined. Humans would be no different. "The human vessel has docked," announced Security Director Tharn. The Vorik officer's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he watched his security feeds. Their ambassador is entering now. The chamber doors opened. Ambassador G1 Park walked in with 3 others behind her. She wore a simple dark suit. Her black hair pulled back. She looked around the chamber once, nodded slightly, then walked to the speaking platform with steady steps. Voss had expected hesitation, maybe fear. He saw neither. This woman moved, like someone entering a business meeting, not the seat of galactic power. "Welcome, humans," Voss said with his practiced warm tone. "We gather to celebrate your species, joining the great community of civilized worlds. For 12,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace and prosperity. We have welcomed 847 species into this noble fellowship. Today, we welcome the 848th. Park bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ambassador Voss. We are honored to be here. We have prepared probationary observer status for your species," Voss continued. "This is traditional for all newcomers. You will learn our ways, understand our systems, and in perhaps 50 or 60 years, you may apply for full membership." Voss waited for the grateful acceptance. Instead, Park pulled out a data tablet. "I have some questions about that," she said. The chamber stirred. "Questions already?" Most species spent their first session just thanking the council repeatedly. "Of course," Voss said, though his smile felt slightly forced. "Though, I assure you, our processes have worked perfectly for millennia." "I'm sure they have," Park said. Her tone remained polite. "But I'd like to understand the representation structure. How are votes weighted? What appeals process exists for trade disputes? How are enforcement decisions made? And who oversees the enforcers?" Voss blinked. These were complex questions that most species took decades to even think about. These are detailed matters, perhaps better discussed after you've had time to study our systems. "We have studied them," Park said. She tapped her tablet. "For the past 8 months, we've been analyzing every council transmission we could access. Your public broadcasts, your trade regulations, your legal frameworks, very thorough documentation, I must say." High Arbiter Quellen leaned forward in his elevated seat. The ancient being's energy form flickered with interest. 8 months? Humanity had only been contacted 9 months ago. They had spent nearly all that time researching? "Most impressive," Chellan said. His voice echoed like wind through crystals. "Few species show such dedication to learning. What have your studies revealed?" Park looked directly at the High Arbiter. "That the Galactic Council is the oldest continuous government in known space. That you've prevented 17 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. That you've established trade networks benefiting trillions of beings. These are remarkable achievements." Voss relaxed slightly. "Good. The human understood the Council's importance. However," Park continued, "we also noticed that voting power is based primarily on how long a species has been a member. That full membership takes an average of 73 years to achieve. That enforcement actions are rarely reviewed by independent bodies. And that species in probationary status have almost no formal protections if senior members decide to exploit them economically." The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages. How dare this newcomer criticize the council? Who did humans think they were? Voss raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador Park, I understand that outsiders sometimes misunderstand our systems. The age-based voting ensures stability. The long membership process allows proper integration. Our enforcement is handled by the most experienced civilizations. Everything has good reasons." "I'm sure it does," Park said. Her voice stayed level. "From your perspective. But from the perspective of younger species, it looks like a system designed to keep power exactly where it is." "That is enough," growled Ambassador Dreth of the Korgothi Empire. The massive reptilian slammed one, clawed hand on his desk. You know nothing of galactic politics, human. You have been in space for barely a century. We have maintained order for 12,000 years. You will show respect. Park turned to face Dreth directly. We will show respect when respect is earned. We will offer cooperation when cooperation is mutual. We will accept guidance from those who have wisdom, not just age. If that makes us difficult, then you're not ready for humanity. Tharn watched from his security station. Something cold settled in his chest. He had seen hundreds of species join the council. They all reacted with awe and gratitude. This human woman looked at the council the same way Tharn looked at potential security threats. She was evaluating, calculating, judging whether the council was worthy of humanity, not the other way around. Voss decided to end this before it got worse. The council will take your comments under advisement. Ambassador Park. We grant humanity probationary observer status. As is traditional, you may attend sessions but not vote. You may trade under council regulations but not set your own terms. You may speak when recognized but not propose legislation. These limits will remain until we determine humanity is ready for greater responsibility. Understood, Park said. She didn't look disappointed or angry. She looked like someone who had just confirmed something she already suspected. We accept probationary status. For now, but know that humanity didn't cross the stars to sit in the back row and wait for permission to matter. We'll follow your rules while we're learning. But we're learning very, very quickly. She bowed again, turned, and walked out. The chamber stayed silent for a long moment after the doors closed. Well, Quellen said finally. Voss tried to laugh it off. Young species always have pride. They learn humility with time. Voss? But Tharn kept watching the security feed, showing Park's ship departing. He had spent 2 centuries protecting the council from external threats. Now he wondered if humanity might be something else entirely. Not a threat to destroy the council with weapons, but something more dangerous. A species that might prove the council wasn't as perfect as it claimed. 3 months had passed since humanity's first council appearance. Ambassador Voss sat in his private office, reviewing reports, and none of them made him happy. The humans were supposed to be quiet. They were supposed to spend years learning and adapting and being grateful. Instead, they were everywhere. Human trade ships moved through neutral space zones, making deals with smaller species. Human scientists published research papers that questioned long-held council theories. Human entertainment spread across the lower-tier worlds. Shows and stories about struggle and victory that other species found strangely compelling. Humans didn't act like probationary members. They acted like they owned the galaxy. They're organizing, Security Director Tharn said, standing before Voss's desk. Quietly, but definitely. They've made contact with 47 species in probationary or lower-tier status. Regular communications, cultural exchanges, trade agreements that bypass council oversight. Number 1. That's not illegal, Voss said, though his tone suggested he wished it were. No, Tharn agreed. They're very careful to follow every rule exactly. But they're building something. A network. An alliance. Maybe. Voss's scales darkened with irritation. What do they want? I believe we're about to find out, Tharn said. Ambassador Park has requested a formal address to the full council. Today. 2 hours later, the council chamber filled again. This time, the representatives came with curiosity instead of ceremony. What would the humans say now? Park took the speaking platform. She carried no tablet this time, just a small data chip. Honored council members, she began. 3 months ago, you granted humanity probationary status. You told us to learn your systems, follow your rules, and prove ourselves worthy of your trust. She inserted the data chip. Holographic displays appeared above every representative's desk. These are detailed analyses of council governance structures, compiled by human researchers. We've examined 12,000 years of council history. Thousands of legislative sessions, millions of trade agreements, and hundreds of enforcement actions. Voss felt his stomach tighten. He had expected a request, maybe a complaint. Not this. What we found is remarkable, Park continued. The Council has indeed maintained peace. You've prevented catastrophic wars. You've built incredible infrastructure. These achievements deserve recognition. Some representatives relaxed slightly. At least the humans appreciated something. But we also found significant problems. Park's voice hardened. Systematic problems. Structural problems. Problems that have existed so long you don't even see them anymore. She highlighted data on the displays. The top 50 council positions are held by species who have been members for over 8,000 years. In the past 2,000 years, only 3 species have moved from lower tier to senior status. The voting system means that the oldest members can override the combined votes of the newest 300 members. This system ensures stability, Ambassador Dreth rumbled. Experience must guide decision-making. Experience is valuable, Park agreed. But this isn't just about experience. Look at these enforcement cases. More data appeared. When senior member species have trade disputes with junior members, the senior species wins 94% of the time. When junior species appeal decisions, their appeals are rejected 89% of the time. When corruption accusations are made against senior members, investigations are opened only 12% of the time. The chamber filled with angry voices. How dare she accuse council members of corruption? These statistics meant nothing, without context. High Arbiter Quellen raised his hand for silence. These numbers require interpretation. Ambassador Park. The senior species win disputes more often, because they understand the law better. Appeals are rejected because they lack merit. Investigations are rare because accusations are usually false. Perhaps, Park said. Or perhaps the system is designed to protect those who created it. Perhaps younger species lose disputes because the laws favor older ones. Perhaps appeals are rejected because the same people who made the decisions review the appeals. Perhaps investigations don't happen because investigators report to those they would investigate. No, she looked around the chamber slowly. You've built a system that can't fix itself because the people with power to change it benefit from keeping it exactly as it is. Voss stood. Ambassador, you go too far. The Council has maintained order for longer than your species has existed. We have earned our authority through millennia of service. You cannot simply arrive and demand we change everything to suit your preferences. We're not demanding you change for us, Park said quietly. We're suggesting you change for them. She gestured at the lower rows where hundreds of junior species sat. Every one of them joined the Council hoping for opportunity and fairness. How many found it? How many are still waiting after decades for the chance to be heard? How many follow rules they didn't help create? Enforced by courts they don't participate in. For the benefit of civilizations that don't need more benefits. Some representatives in the lower rows shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded slightly. You asked what humanity wants, Park continued. We want reforms. Transparent voting records so everyone knows how decisions are made. Independent oversight bodies to review enforcement actions. Protection systems for junior species against economic exploitation. And representation based on contribution, not just age. Let species prove their worth through their actions, not their patience. Impossible, Voss said flatly. Such changes would destabilize everything. The Council works because we respect tradition and hierarchy. Without those principles, we have chaos. You have stagnation, Park replied. You have a government that cannot adapt because adaptation threatens those in power. You have a system that younger species resent but cannot change. That's not stability. That's pressure. Building toward an explosion. Dreth slammed his desk again. You speak of explosion? Is that a threat, human? No. Park said. It's a warning. We've seen this before in our own history. Systems that refuse to reform eventually break. sometimes peacefully, sometimes violently, but they always break. We're offering you a chance to change before that happens. And if we refuse? Voss asked. Park smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Then humanity will continue following your rules exactly. We'll build our networks, strengthen our alliances, and prove our worth to other species who feel the same way we do. You'll face a choice. Reform voluntarily, or watch as enough species unite to force reform. We'd prefer the first option. It's less messy. The Council does not respond to pressure, High Arbiter Quellen said. His energy form pulsed with something that might have been anger or might have been concern. We will not be threatened into abandoning principles that have served the galaxy for 12,000 years. Then we have nothing more to discuss today, Park said. She bowed. Thank you for your time. She left. The chamber exploded into argument. Tharn watched her go, and felt that cold feeling in his chest grow stronger. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Council. They were trying to replace it with something better. Or rather, they were organizing others to help them do it. That night, Voss met privately with Quellen and several senior members. They discussed the human problem. They're dangerous, Voss said. Not militarily, but ideologically. They're making other species question the system. Perhaps, Quellen said slowly. Some questions are worth asking. Voss stared at the High Arbiter. You cannot seriously consider their demands. I consider everything, Quellen said. That is why I have survived 12,000 years. The humans are arrogant and impatient, but they are not entirely wrong. Our system has flaws. Perhaps it is time we acknowledged them. Change now would appear weak, Dreth growled. Like we're surrendering to human pressure. Change never appears strong to those who benefit from the status quo, Quellen observed. But failure to change appears far worse when the alternative is collapse. The meeting ended without decisions. But seeds of doubt had been planted. Ambassador Park sat in her quarters, reviewing the session. It had gone exactly as expected. She hadn't convinced the Council to reform. Not yet. But she had made them defend their system publicly. She had made junior species aware of the statistics. She had made everyone think. That was enough. For now. The alert reached Council Station at 0300 Standard Time. Security Director Tharn received it first, his 4 eyes scanning the data with growing alarm. By null dri ein null, he had woken every senior council member. What do you mean the Krell have awakened? Ambassador Voss demanded through the communication link, still half asleep. Exactly that, Tharn said grimly. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive spatial distortions in the outer reaches. The signature matches historical records. The Krell swarm has emerged from dormancy. Voss felt suddenly very awake. Every civilized species knew about the Krell, silicon-based organisms that reproduced in century-long cycles. They would expand explosively, consuming resources from dozens of worlds. Then retreat to deep space, to process and reproduce. The last emergence had been 117 years ago. The Council had barely pushed them back then, and that was when the Council fleet was stronger. How many? Voss asked. Estimates suggest this swarm is 3 times the size of the last emergence. By 0600, the full Council convened in emergency session. The chamber felt different now, charged with fear instead of political maneuvering. High Arbiter Quellen addressed them with unusual urgency. The Krell swarm threatens 7 frontier worlds directly. Approximately 4 billion beings are in immediate danger. We must mobilize the defense fleets immediately. No one argued. Within hours, Council warships began gathering. Massive dreadnoughts, shield cruisers, and carrier groups assembled using doctrine perfected over millennia. The Council had fought many wars. They knew how to respond. Admiral Korth of the Dravian Concordat took command. He was ancient even by galactic standards, having led fleets for over 2,000 years. His strategy was traditional. Form massive battle formations. Use overlapping shields. overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower. It had worked countless times before. It failed catastrophically against the Krell. The first engagement lasted 47 minutes. The Council fleet outnumbered the Krell 3-1 and had superior weapons. But the Krell swarm didn't fight like any normal enemy. They operated as a single distributed intelligence, each organism connected to the whole. When Council ships destroyed Krell units, the swarm learned from those losses. It adapted, changed tactics, found weaknesses. By the time Admiral Korth ordered retreat, he had lost 19 ships and thousands of crew. The second engagement went worse. The Krell had learned from the first battle. They knew Council tactics now, understood Council weapons. They destroyed 32 ships. Within 3 weeks, 2 frontier worlds fell. The Krell stripped them of resources, building more of themselves. Refugees flooded toward Council space, millions fleeing in terror. Ambassador Voss sat in a strategy session with the Council's military leadership. Admiral Korth looked exhausted. "We need more ships," the Admiral said. "Bigger formations. We can still win through attrition if we commit sufficient resources." "How many more ships?" Voss asked. 500 additional capital ships. "Perhaps more. That will take months to assemble," Tharn observed. "The Krell will have taken a dozen worlds by then. Then what do you suggest?" Korth snapped. "These strategies have worked for 12,000 years. The problem is insufficient force, not flawed doctrine." A communication chime interrupted them. Tharn checked the message, then looked up with surprise. "The humans are offering assistance." The room fell silent. "Assistance?" Voss repeated. "What could they possibly contribute? They've been in space for barely a century. They have no experience with threats like this." "They claim their military has studied the Krell emergence," Tharn said, reading the message. "They're offering to commit combat forces under Council command." "Absolutely not," Admiral Korth said immediately. "I will not have untested primitives interfering with military operations. We should at least hear their offer," High Arbiter Kellen said quietly. "We are losing this war, Admiral. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford." 2 days later, Admiral Seo Yun Choi arrived at Council Station with representatives from Earth's 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. She was younger than most Council military officers, her black hair cut short, her uniform lacking the decorations that covered Korth's chest. "Thank you for seeing us," she said, simply. Korth looked her up and down with obvious skepticism. "What military experience do you have, Admiral Choi?" 23 years of service," she replied. "I've commanded ships in combat operations across 4 different conflicts." 4 conflicts, Korth said, his tone making clear this was pathetically few. "I have commanded fleets in over 200 engagements. The Krell swarm is beyond anything your species has encountered." "Probably true," Choi agreed. "But we've encountered enemies that adapt and learn. We've faced numerically superior opponents. And we've developed tactics for dealing with distributed intelligence systems. Our military history is shorter than yours, but it's been very intense." She brought up tactical displays showing human fleet compositions. Korth frowned. "Your ships are small. Light weapons. Minimal shielding. These would be destroyed instantly against the Krell." "Maybe," Choi said. "But size isn't everything. We don't fight like you do. We don't form massive battle lines and trade firepower. We use mobility, deception, and coordinated strikes." "Cowardly tactics," Korth muttered. "Effective tactics," Choi corrected calmly. "Your formations are powerful but predictable. The Krell have learned to counter them. Our tactics are harder to predict because every engagement is different." Voss rubbed his temples. This was going nowhere. "Admiral Choi, we appreciate your offer, but 4 billion people are going to die." Choi interrupted. Her voice stayed level, but something in her eyes went hard. "Maybe 5 or 6 billion. If the Krell take more worlds, you can accept our help or reject it. But don't reject it because you're embarrassed to need us." The room went silent. No one spoke to council members that way. Tharn broke the silence. "What exactly are you offering?" "Earth's third expeditionary fleet. 78 ships, including carriers, destroyers, and support vessels. We'll operate under council command, but we need tactical independence. Our captains must be free to adapt without waiting for permission." "Unacceptable," Korth said. "Military operations require coordination and discipline. Ships cannot simply do whatever they want." "Then you'll keep losing," Choi said bluntly. "The Krell adapt faster than your command structure can respond. By the time you analyze their changes, issue new orders, and wait for confirmation, they've already adapted again. Our way works because our captains think for themselves." Ambassador Park entered the room. She had been listening from the observation area. "The council needs to decide," she said. "Accept our help with our methods, or reject us and continue losing. But decide quickly. People are dying while you debate." High Arbiter Kellen studied the tactical displays showing human ship configurations. They looked fragile compared to Council dreadnoughts. But the Council dreadnoughts were burning in space above frontier worlds, right now. "Admiral Choi will take command of the defensive operations in Sector 7, Quellen announced. "She will have tactical independence within that sector. Admiral Korth, you will continue command of the main fleet." Korth looked like he wanted to protest. But something in Quellen's energy field suggested this was not negotiable. "Council observers will accompany your ships," Korth said to Choi, his tone cold. "We will document everything. If your methods fail, you will be held accountable." "Understood," Choi said. "And if our methods succeed?" No one answered that. The human fleet arrived in Sector 7 3 days later. Council observers aboard the flagship watched nervously as human ships dispersed across the system. No tight formations. No coordinated shield walls. Each ship group operated independently, maintaining communication but not waiting for central orders. It looked like chaos. Then the Krell arrived. They came in their usual massive wave, expecting to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. The human ships scattered like startled fish. They broke apart, regrouped, attacked from unexpected angles. Krell organisms tried to adapt, but every time they learned to counter one tactic, the humans shifted to something else. Human ships used the environment, hiding behind asteroids, using gravity wells, creating interference patterns that disrupted Krell coordination. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Krell had retreated. The human fleet had lost 4 ships. The Krell had lost hundreds. Council observers transmitted their reports in stunned silence. Admiral Korth read them with growing disbelief. The humans hadn't just fought. They had won. The war continued for 3 more months. Human tactics stabilized the front lines across 5 sectors. Council forces still outnumbered the humans 10 to 1. But increasingly, Council admirals requested human advisory units. Admiral Choi's name became known across the fleet, spoken with respect, and, among some older officers, resentment. But the Krell kept coming. For every nest destroyed, 2 more appeared. The swarm had established a massive complex in the Vardos system, converting 3 entire planets into breeding grounds. Intelligence estimates suggested tens of billions of Krell organisms were being produced there daily. Admiral Korth called another strategy session. This time, Admiral Choi attended as an equal rather than a supplicant. "The Vardos complex must be eliminated," Korth said, displaying the system on holographic screens. "It is the heart of the swarm's reproduction. However, it is also the most heavily defended position we have encountered." The displays showed dense Krell formations around all 3 planets. Millions of organisms patrolled the space between worlds. Massive structures covered the planetary surfaces, pulsing with activity. "Standard doctrine requires a siege," Korth continued. "We surround the system, cut off resources, and slowly build overwhelming force. Timeline: 2 to 3 years before assault can begin." Total operation time: 5 to 7 years. That's too long, Tharn said immediately. The Krell will have spread to 40 or 50 worlds by then. Trillions of beings at risk. I am aware, Korth said coldly. But rushing against such defenses would be suicide. We would lose thousands of ships for minimal gain. The strategic calculus is clear. Admiral Choi studied the displays silently. Her expression was unreadable. You have thoughts, Admiral? Quellen asked. Yes, Choi said. I think a siege is the wrong approach. Of course you do, Korth muttered. I suppose you have a better idea? Actually, yes. Choi manipulated the displays, highlighting the planetary nest structures. The Krell swarm operates as a distributed intelligence, but that intelligence needs coordination nodes. These structures aren't just breeding facilities. They're processing centers where individual Krell receive instructions and share information. She zoomed in on specific structures on each planet. 3 primary nodes, 1 per planet. They're buried deep, but not impossible to reach. If we can strike all 3 simultaneously and destroy them, the swarm loses coordination. Without coordination, billions of Krell become just billions of individual organisms, still dangerous, but manageable. Korth stared at her like she had suggested flying ships directly into a star. Strike all 3 planets simultaneously? The defenses are impenetrable. We would need massive forces on each world. The casualties would be catastrophic. Yes, Choi said simply. They would. Voss felt sick. You're proposing a suicide mission. I'm proposing a winning mission with acceptable losses, Choi corrected. Your siege would cost years and possibly more lives in the long run. My plan costs lives now, but ends the war quickly. How many lives? Quellen asked quietly. Choi didn't look away from the High Arbiter. Human casualties estimated at 30 to 40% of forces committed. Supporting Council forces would take lighter losses, maybe 15%. Total dead, probably 50,000 beings. The room went silent. 50,000 dead in a single operation was unthinkable by Council standards. That is unacceptable, Korth said. The Council does not sacrifice its people so casually. Then the Council will lose slowly instead of winning quickly, Choi said. Her voice was flat, matter of fact. I'm not being cruel. I'm being realistic. War costs lives. The question is whether we spend them efficiently or waste them. Your siege would cost hundreds of thousands over years. My strike costs 50,000 over days. Ambassador Park entered the chamber. She had been consulting with her government. Earth authorizes Admiral Choi to proceed if the Council agrees, she said. We're willing to accept the casualties for human forces. We understand if Council members are not comfortable with such losses. All. It was carefully phrased, but everyone heard the implication. Humans were willing to do what the Council could not. Korth's face darkened. You question our courage? I question your strategic flexibility. Park replied. You've fought wars for 12,000 years, using tactics that minimize casualties, because you have time to spare. You don't have time now. The Krell don't care about your careful calculations. Adapt. Or lose. High Arbiter Kulin's energy form pulsed with complex colors that suggested deep thought. Finally, he spoke. Admiral Choi will execute her plan. She will command all forces in the Vardos operation. Admiral Korth, you will provide support as requested. Korth looked like he wanted to refuse, but Quellen's tone made clear this was not a request. The responsibility for losses is yours, Admiral Choi, Korth said coldly. History will judge you accordingly. History always does, Choi agreed. Preparation took 2 weeks. Human forces trained Council units in ground assault tactics. The Council soldiers struggled with the pace. Humans moved fast, made decisions in seconds, accepted risks that seemed insane. But they learned. They had to. Commander Minho Sung led the ground assault planning. He was younger than Choi, but his soldiers followed him with absolute loyalty. Council observers noticed that human troops didn't follow orders blindly. They questioned, suggested alternatives, debated tactics. Yet when decisions were made, they executed them perfectly. It was strange to Council military observers. This combination of discussion and discipline. Your troops lack proper respect for hierarchy, a Dravian officer commented to Sung. Our troops respect competence, Sung replied. Hierarchy is just a tool. When it helps us win, we use it. When it gets in the way, we work around it. The day of the assault arrived. The combined fleet entered the Vardo system. Immediately, Krell defenses activated. Millions of organisms moved to intercept. Human ships scattered in their chaotic-looking patterns. But this time, Council ships followed their lead, breaking formation, using independent tactics. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than rigid battle lines. Captain Hei-Won Kang commanded the fighter wing that would escort the ground assault ships. Her pilots were the best Earth had, flying ships that sacrificed protection for speed and agility. Remember your training, she transmitted to her pilots. We're not trying to kill every Krell. We're trying to get our ground forces through. Stay focused. The space battle was brutal. Human ships took terrible losses, creating openings for the assault transports. Kang watched 3 of her pilots die in the first 10 minutes. She kept flying. Council officers watched in horror and awe as human ships deliberately sacrificed themselves to protect the assault forces. Captains rammed Krell formations. Damaged ships flew suicide, runs to clear paths. It was terrible. It was necessary. The assault transports reached the 3 planets. Ground forces deployed under heavy fire. Commander Sung led the assault on Vardos Prime. The Krell nest structures rose like mountains, pulsing with organic technology. His troops moved through hellish conditions, fighting through Krell defenders that seemed endless. Keep moving, Sung shouted over combat communications. We stop, we die. Forward is the only direction that matters. They lost soldiers at every step. But they reached the primary coordination node. Human engineers placed shaped charges, with precision, born of desperate need. The countdown began. On Vardos 2nd, human and Council forces fought side by side. Council soldiers watched humans carry wounded comrades under fire, saw them share their last medical supplies with alien allies, witnessed them hold impossible positions so others could advance. On Vardos 3rd, the assault nearly failed. Krell defenses were stronger than expected, but a Council unit, inspired by human determination, made a suicidal charge that broke through. They reached their target. Across all 3 planets, the charges detonated within seconds of each other. The coordination nodes exploded. Massive structures collapsed, and across the Vardos system, billions of Krell organisms suddenly stopped receiving instructions. The swarm fractured. Without coordination, individual Krell became confused, disorganized. Some continued fighting. Others fled. Many simply stopped moving, their connection to the hive severed. The space battle turned from desperate struggle to cleanup operation. Without unified direction, Krell ships were just targets. The operation succeeded. The Vardos complex fell in 73 hours instead of 7 years. Human casualties were 42%. 37,000 human soldiers died. Supporting Council forces lost 12,000. Total, 49,000 dead. 50,000 beings who would never go home. Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of her flagship, reading the casualty reports. Her face remained expressionless, but her hands shook slightly. Admiral Korth transmitted a message. He looked like he had aged a century. Your strategy worked, he said quietly. You won the war. But at such cost. Yes, Choi said. War always costs. The question was never whether people would die. The question was whether they would die for something that mattered. She looked at the tactical display showing the shattered Krell defenses. They died winning. The war ended 4 months after the Vardos operation. Without their central breeding complex, The Krell swarm collapsed. Remaining nests were destroyed methodically. The threat that had seemed overwhelming was gone, but the galaxy was different now. Changed in ways that went deeper than military victory. The Council convened to officially recognize the war's end and honor those who fought. The chamber was packed. Every representative attended. This time, when Ambassador Park entered, no one questioned her right to be there. High Arbiter Quellen addressed the assembly. His energy form pulsed with somber colors. We gather to mourn the fallen and celebrate our survival. The Krell swarm threatened billions. We stopped them, but we must acknowledge a difficult truth. We could not have won without humanity's help. The chamber remained silent. For 12,000 years, the Council had been the supreme power. Now, an upstart species that had been in space for barely a century had saved them. Humanity demonstrated capabilities we did not anticipate, Quellen continued. Strategic innovation, tactical flexibility, and perhaps most importantly, the courage to make difficult choices. Admiral Korth stood to speak. He looked uncomfortable. I have commanded fleets for 2,000 years, he said slowly. I have won 200 engagements, using proven strategies. But against the Krell, my strategies failed. Admiral Choi succeeded where I could not. This is difficult to admit, but truth matters more than pride. He turned to face the section where human representatives sat. The Council owes humanity a debt, one that cannot be repaid with words alone. Ambassador Park rose and walked to the speaking platform. She moved with the same steady confidence she had shown at her first appearance, but something was different. Before, the Council had looked at her with condescension. Now, they looked with respect. Some with fear. All with attention. Thank you, Admiral Korth, she said. Your acknowledgement means something. But I didn't come here today to talk about debts or gratitude. I came to talk about the future. She looked around the chamber slowly. 3 months ago, I stood here and criticized this council. I pointed out flaws, suggested you were stagnant, claimed you weren't ready for humanity. Some of you were angry. Some were insulted. All of you rejected what I said. The war proved us wrong, Quellen said quietly. The war proved my specific criticisms correct, Park replied. Your rigid command structures couldn't adapt. Your emphasis on avoiding casualties meant you couldn't make necessary sacrifices. Your age-based system meant the voices with fresh perspectives were ignored. If you had listened to our suggestions 3 months ago, maybe 50,000 beings would still be alive. The chamber stirred uncomfortably. She was right, and everyone knew it. But I'm not here to shame you, Park continued. I'm here because humanity proved something else too. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We have our own flaws and limitations. But we're willing to change, to learn, to adapt. And we believe the galaxy needs that flexibility. She pulled out a data tablet. This is a formal proposal. Humanity requests full council membership with a seat on the Security Directorate. But we will only accept if certain reforms are implemented. CZ. Reforms? Ambassador Voss asked. He sounded tired. What reforms? Transparent voting records for all council decisions. Independent oversight boards, with rotating membership to review enforcement actions. Protection protocols for junior species to prevent economic exploitation by senior members. And representation weighted by contribution and population, not just age. Species that help the galaxy should have a voice in governing it. The chamber erupted. Half the representatives shouted support. The other half shouted refusal. The debate raged for hours. Ambassador Dreth of the Korgothi Empire finally slammed his desk for silence. The massive reptilian looked at Park with something between anger and grudging respect. You ask for significant changes to systems that have worked for 12,000 years, he rumbled. You want us to abandon traditions because of one war. Why should we agree? End quote. Why should we agree? Because the galaxy is changing, Park said simply. You've had 12,000 years of relative stability, but that stability was built on specific conditions that no longer exist. New species are emerging faster than ever. Technology is advancing rapidly. Threats like the Krell will come again. Maybe worse. You need a government that can handle change, not one that resists it. And you believe humanity should lead this change? Dreth asked. No. Park said. Surprising many. We don't want to lead. We want to participate. As equals. With all the responsibilities and rights that entails. We're not trying to replace the Council. We're trying to save it by making it something worth preserving. High Arbiter Quellen's energy form shifted through colors that suggested deep consideration. Finally, he spoke. The Council will debate these reforms. It will take time. There will be resistance. But I believe Ambassador Park is correct. We must change or become irrelevant. Perhaps humanity's greatest contribution is not their military capability, but their willingness to question systems everyone else accepts. A compromise emerged over the following weeks. Humanity would receive full council membership and a security directorate seat. Reforms would be implemented gradually, overseen by a joint committee with representatives from multiple tiers. The changes wouldn't happen overnight, but they would happen. Some senior members resigned in protest. Others adapted. The galaxy moved forward. 6 months after the war's end, Ambassador Park stood with Security Director Tharn, watching a training facility where human and alien military officers trained together. This was your goal from the beginning, wasn't it? Tharn asked. You knew we'd need you eventually. You planned all of this. We planned for possibilities, Park admitted. We studied the Council and saw its weaknesses. We knew a crisis would come eventually. We made sure we'd be ready to help when it did. That's remarkably calculating. That's survival, Park corrected. Humanity learned long ago that power respects power. We couldn't demand a place at the table, so we made ourselves indispensable. Now we have that place, and we'll use it to make things better. For humanity? For everyone, Park said. We're not stupid. We know we can't thrive if the galaxy burns. Helping others helps us. Strengthening the Council strengthens our position. It's not charity. It's enlightened self-interest. Tharn watched human instructors teaching adaptive tactics to Council cadets. I was terrified of you when you first arrived, he admitted. I thought you were a threat to everything we built. We were, Park said. Just not the way you thought. We weren't threatening to destroy the Council. We were threatening to change it. Sometimes that's scarier. A communication chime interrupted them. Tharn checked it, then looked up with surprise. Long-range sensors have detected an unknown species entering Council space. First contact situation. 42, 42, 42, 42, 42. Park straightened. How is the Council responding? They're following new protocols, Tharn said, with something that might have been a smile. First contact team will include representatives from multiple tiers. Transparent documentation. No assumptions about hierarchy. They're using your suggestions. Good, Park said. She started walking toward the Council chambers. I should observe. First contacts are always interesting. What do you think they'll be like? Tharn asked, walking beside her. Park smiled. I have no idea, but I'm curious to see how the Council handles this. Will they fall back on old habits? Or have we actually changed something? This will be the real test. They entered the Council chambers as the first contact team assembled. Ambassador Voss was there, along with representatives from a dozen species. The mood was different from Park's first arrival. Less arrogant certainty. More genuine curiosity. The unknown species would arrive in hours. The galaxy waited to see what would happen. Park took her seat among the Council members, not as an observer, not as a supplicant, but as an equal. It had taken less than a year, but humanity had gone from probationary newcomers to full members of galactic governance. And the real work was just beginning. High Arbiter Kellen addressed the assembly. We approach this first contact with new protocols and, hopefully, new wisdom. We have learned that every species has value. Regardless of age or power, we have learned that strength comes in many forms. We have learned that the greatest threat to civilization is not external enemies, but internal stagnation. He paused, his energy form pulsing with warm colors. Humanity taught us these lessons. Sometimes gently, sometimes harshly, but always honestly. For that, we are grateful. The chamber affirmed with various sounds and gestures from dozens of species. Park sat quietly, thinking about the long road ahead. The council was changing, but change was slow and difficult. There would be setbacks, resistance, conflicts, but for the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Council was moving forward instead of just maintaining the past. And humanity would be there, pushing, questioning, adapting, and helping build something better. The unknown species ship appeared on sensors. First contact would begin soon. The galaxy was ready. Finally, truly ready. Not because they had all the answers, but because they were willing to ask better questions.